she also gets the most metal line in this entire piece of cinema, which is my body is no longer his temple. I was like, yes, bitch, tell him. Absolutely.
That's Girlboss shit, yeah.
Yeah. Cryptkeep, Girlboss. Yeah. I can't believe that got you.
We have to think up two others for the title of this episode.
It's God, what's a good one for Gaslight?
That's the thing.
Torchlight, Cryptkeep, Girlboss.
There. We've done it, folks. Welcome to Mortified, the Friendship Quest, a podcast where two long-distance friends bounce media recommendations, all in hopes the other will like it. I'm Aaron.
And I'm a spooky, spooky beetle.
And this week, we make some poor archaeological choices in The Mummy. Before we try to resurrect our hot Venezuelan girlfriend, remember you can help us on Mortified the Legitimacy Quest by subscribing to us on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, signing up for our monthly newsletter through the link in our show notes, or following us on Twitter and Tumblr at MortifiedPod. Leyla,
Aaron.
I thought we were done with spooky season.
You know, I too, but here's the thing. I think we are the spooky season.
Are we?
Yeah, we're Scorpios, and that's very spooky in and of itself, I think.
Based on the events happening in our lives, I think there is something very spooky going on with the energies of the stars this particular month. So yes, it is certainly a spooky time, but I think we have one shining bright star, the Orion's belt that lights our way, and that is, of course, Brendan Fraser, which is, of course, the reason why we watched this movie, I think.
Yeah. Hey, listen, if this can be a Hugh Jackman fan podcast, it can also be a Brendan Fraser fan podcast.
That's the thing. Like, we have a long-standing love of Hugh Jackman, but we haven't really dipped our toes into the Fraser verse yet. But, like, from all that I could tell, Brendan Fraser seems like a really, really neat guy.
Yeah, I watched a video of him not too long ago where some interviewer told him that he's like an internet darling, and he got really emotional. I was like, Brendan Fraser, you should know. You should know. You deserve to know.
We love you, Brendan. So we decided to visit one of his seminal works, the 1999 Mummy. Not the great one with Tom Cruise, naturally. But yeah, I think it was kind of a good fit. I feel like it's very similar to Van Helsing in a lot of ways, but I think it actually it excises a lot of the bad parts of that like mid-2000s like edgy era, and it's just like straight up fun, and I really enjoyed watching this movie.
I thought it was great. It was not what I thought it was, and I did have to tab out a couple of times because I'm a coward and I don't like icky things. But
we'll talk about that.
Oh, whoa, certainly. But I did have a great time. I liked a lot of things about it, including the characters.
Yes, I think the characters really sell this movie, and we're gonna talk to them, or talk about them very soon. I kind of want to tackle the plot summary because I have an anecdote.
Oh, Lord.
And that is that my first introduction to The Mummy was in the 3rd grade, not the movie, the novelization. And if you remember from the opening of The Mummy, which shows the titular mummy, a man named Imhotep, who lived in Egypt in 1200 BC. He's, a very old man. And his whole deal is that he's, hooking up with the pharaoh's mistress, and that's illegal. So the pharaoh doesn't like that. His mistress, whose name is Anaxunamun, dies by suicide to escape the pharaoh, and he, uses his evil Egyptian magics to, try to resurrect her, but instead he's caught and turned into the titular mummy. Now, this is a very graphic scene. In the movie, because what they do to him is first they say that his priests are mummified alive, which sounds awful. And then what they do is they cut his tongue out, and then they mummify him alive, and then they pour scarabs into his coffin, his sarcophagus rather, and they put him, in a sarcophagus, and they bury him under the temple, and like that's the whole deal. And it's like, and we usually don't do that because when we do, it creates an unholy abomination that can destroy the world. So, but we did do it this one time. But like this guy really pissed off the pharaoh, so we had to do it to him. I read that scene, and reading that scene was way scarier than seeing it, especially to my overactive third grade imagination. Yeah, scared the fuck out of me. Did not sleep for weeks. Anyway, that's how this movie opens. We cut to Brendan Fraser fighting the Bedouins, for some reason. Basically, we find out that Brendan Fraser, whose character's name is Rick O'Connell, is, I guess, some sort of like mercenary / I don't know. It's set in 1926, so like, he was doing some colonizer shit, like, not great, but this was the golden age of, British people taking stuff from England or Egypt. But basically he finds this lady whose name is Evelyn, and her brother Jonathan find the location to this secret city of the dead. They hire Brendan Fraser to take them there. On the way, they meet some Americans who are also trying to hunt down the Book of the Dead. They have some hijinks. They meet the Magi, who are like a secret group of Egyptians trying to stop people from disturbing the mummy's tomb, because otherwise, mummy's gonna come back and get everyone. They make it there. They discover the mummy, despite all the Magi's best efforts. And due to some, reading from a clearly evil book, they reawaken the mummy. Mummy comes back. That's not great. And he starts eating all the Americans and turning them into husks. The mummy does enlist Brendan Fraser's old, I guess, like squad mate Benny, who we'll talk about, who is a very interesting character, to like help him. They do the whole like 10 plagues of Egypt thing, but they don't do all of them. I wish they had done a frog plague, if I'm being honest. But they do the good ones, the flaming hail and the locusts and the flies. Anyway, Evelyn gets captured because the mummy Imhotep is going to sacrifice her to bring back his girlfriend. There's a big battle. Brendan Fraser gets a sword. It kicks ass. And there's a happy ending. It's a pretty straightforward action movie. It's mostly action sequences, I feel, but in spite of that, I think they do a really good job with a lot of the characters. And I think those characters are ultimately what makes this movie like kind of great, and why people think of Brendan Fraser as such a cool guy. At least from this era.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've never watched or interacted with any part of the Mummy franchise. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I didn't expect it to be quite so action-y. There's a lot of action sequences. And I think there were a couple of pacing issues. Like the escalation just, I don't know. It didn't feel very connected to me sometimes, but not in a way that mattered to me in the moment. Like it was just so fun that I was just kind of along for the ride.
Yeah, I think it probably could have been a half hour shorter, but it was fine.
I think most movies can be
that's true. No one really needs those 2 hours. Leyla, do you want to talk to us about Rick O'Connell, our titular Brendan Fraser? I don't know why the movie's not called Brendan Fraser. I don't know why I said titular. But the man, the myth, legend. It should be. This movie should be called 1999's Brendan Fraser.
All I have to say about our good pal Brendan is hubba hubba. He looks great in this movie, and he does a lot of cool things.
There's a sequence where he's in jail, and like he is full on like George of the Jungle, like long haired, like shirtless. Like I mean, he looks good.
He looks fantastic. But also, I really like the whole like dashing rogue thing he's got going on. Like he's kind of an asshole, and he does some things that like the way him and Evelyn meet is he kisses her, and like that's not great. Don't grab random women and kiss them. But afterwards she was like, "Why'd you kiss me?" And he was like, "I thought I was dying. It just felt right. And like we were talking about, before this recording, that's not necessarily like a good thing, but as a character choice that makes sense. And just the way he plays it off is very funny in this. For some reason, I didn't figure he would be as much of like a no nonsense kind of like go getter kind of guy, but he is, and it's very funny. And perhaps some of the character choices don't age particularly well, but the ones that do, boy howdy, they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think the thing that made me, alerted me to this movie and why we should watch it is the scene where he is about to be executed, and like they bring him out to the gallows, and they're like, "Do you have any last requests?" And he's like, "Yeah, untie the knot and let me go." And they ask the jail warden, they're like, "Should he wants us to let him go?" And he's like, "No, of course you don't let him go." That's just rules. I think you're very much right about Brendan Fraser being the dashing scoundrel. Right, I get a lot of Han Solo vibes from him, but I do think he is much nicer to his partner, his romantic interest than Han is to Leia. And I really thought that he was effective and much more charming than like. When people try to do anti-heroes, sometimes they go too far and they make them unlikable. I think he was just enough like roguish, but also like he makes conversation with Evelyn several times throughout the movie, which was a thing that I like wrote down because I was like, we never get like the male hero asking the female hero about her interests. And like, I thought that was great.
Yeah. And I mean, there's also, I really like that Evelyn, once he does talk to her a couple of times, he steals some tools for her because she said she lost her like archaeological tools. And he comes over to her and it's this like big charismatic character and he's so like cool all the time. And he comes over to her, he's like stuttering. He's like, I just thought you could, whatever, like, it's fine. It's no big deal. That's something. And
it's cute. I love it.
It was really good. And it was like my second favorite scene with them. But we could mention the first favorite scene when we talk about Evelyn.
Evelyn's very cool. I was astonished by the amount of characterization we got with Evelyn in her first scene, because we get her knocking over every bookshelf in this library, and we get her adoptive father coming in and being like, "Oh, I can't believe, why do I put up with you? You're worse than all the plagues." And he's like, "Tell me why I tolerate you." And she's like, "Oh, well, I'm, very well educated and I'm, I can read ancient Egyptian. I know so many languages and I can organize this library." And he's like, "No, I put up with you because your parents donated to my library." And like, that's just a lot. And he says, "Allah rest their souls," which is like, okay, yeah, that's everything we need to know about Evelyn there in like a 20-second conversation. I was like, you know what? That's efficient storytelling. I appreciate it.
Yeah, she's also, we kind of see her acting before she thinks, which is the whole reason the bookshelves fell over was because she wanted to file a book while she was on a ladder on the bookshelf behind her. And that started off this whole like, domino effect of all these incredibly conveniently lined up bookshelves of toppling all around her in a perfect circle. But she does that a lot. It's kind of how the mummy wakes up. She just kind of starts reading from a book that maybe she shouldn't have.
Whomst among us?
Exactly. But my favorite scene with her and Rick O'Connell, our good friend Brendan Fraser, is when she's incredibly drunk and they're talking, and he's like, I figured out your brother. He's kind of sucks, but he's fine. I figured out all these other guys, whatever. I can't figure you out. Why are you here? And she's just like, she goes on this whole long tangent, and then she finally stands up with like full indignation, and she's like, I'm here because I am a librarian.
It rules.
It's so good. It made me laugh so hard. And then she tries to kiss Rick and then passes out into him, and he's like, fine. All right. That's how tonight's going, I guess.
Yeah. It's very good. It's cute. Do you have thoughts about Jonathan, Evelyn's brother?
I liked him a lot. He sucks.
Yeah, he's kind of like a shitty, he's introduced in a scene like, propping up a dead body and like scaring his sister with it, which is like, there is a lot of disrespect of, Egyptian bodies in this, which is not great. We're not condoning any of that, but, it does convey his character that he's like, he's irreverent. He is a disgraced, like scholar sort of. And, he's just kind of like a shitty dude who's along for the ride. I think one of my favorite scenes is when like him and Rick and the main Magi guy are trying to like break back in to save Evelyn, and there's like a big thing of rocks in the way. And like they do the thing where, you know, the other two guys are just like, you know, taking the bricks out, and he's like, oh yeah, you should start with the big ones and then, you know, move the smaller ones, and then you really got to lift with your legs. And like he's doing the fucking like, oh, I'm going to be the supervisor gag, but like, and you know, that's of course a very played joke, but I thought he committed to the bit and delivered it very well. And I laughed at things that I generally do not think are funny in this movie. And I think that goes to the actor's credit.
Yeah, everyone really commits to the bit. I think my favorite Jonathan moment was when the mob of like brainwashed Imhotep slaves is coming at him, and he just like slows down and turns the direction they're going and starts chanting Imhotep until they pass him and he can go to the car. There's just a lot of like very fun, kind of almost cartoonish quick thinking and gags in this one, and like you said, like I wouldn't expect to laugh at it, but I think the movie does such a good job of setting that particular tone that it does pull you into the kind of absurd logic of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. How do we feel about Imhotep and subsequently Anuk-Su-Namun?
He's a simp, and I respect that.
Oh, you ever simp so hard for someone that you betray your god ruler and then try to resurrect her and then get buried alive, and then when you are resurrected 3,000 years later, still try to bring her back? I mean, that's on another level of commitment, man.
We were talking about committing to the bit, man. I also, you know, I do appreciate Anuk-Su-Namun for being a bitch willing to stab.
Yeah, she very much. There's a. I think one of the funniest sequences in this is when Anuk-Su-Namun and Imhotep, like, you know, the pharaoh catches them, you know, like cavorting together. He's like, how can this be? And then like Imhotep comes behind and like stabs him in the back with a sword, and then she draws a dagger, and we just get to see like the shadow silhouettes of them just stabbing the fuck out of the shadow. It's so funny. It's so excessive. They're just going at it so hard, and it rules.
And then they do it again when she gets stabbed at the end of the movie, and that's she also gets the most metal line in this entire piece of cinema, which is "My body is no longer his temple." I was like, yes, bitch, tell him. Absolutely.
That's Girlboss shit. Yeah.
Cryptkeep, Girlboss. Yeah. I can't believe that got you.
We have to think up two others for the title of this episode.
It's God, what's a good one for Gaslight?
That's the thing.
Torchlight, Cryptkeep, Girlboss.
There. We've done it, folks. Yeah, you know, Imhotep's a fine villain. He's very single-minded about his girlfriend, and he, you know, turns a bunch of dudes into little jerky men, and that's fine.
A tasty snack for when you're done taking over the world.
Exactly. How do you feel about Benny?
I love Benny.
He seems like you're kind of a little shit.
He's just funny. His heel, he has a really great moment when like he just meets Imhotep for the first time, and he's like pulled out the cross, and he's like, you know, Jesus Christ save me or whatever. And I was like, oh, weird that a guy from, you know, that region and that time would pull out the cross. And then he starts pulling out all the other necklaces from all the other religions. And the reason he doesn't die is because he hits on the Star of David, and he says a little thing in Hebrew, and Imhotep is like, the language of the slaves, I could use you. And he's like, fuck. Not only do I get to stay alive, but I get paid. Absolutely. And I respect that kind of self-sufficient thinking, you know?
Listen, I think we've all worked jobs that was like, yeah, if an evil avatar of death did walk into this place and offered me, you know, a 20% raise to help murder everyone in this building, like, I wouldn't say no. I would consider it. I probably wouldn't say yes, but I would think it over.
Oh, absolutely. Aaron, how do you feel about the Americans?
I mean, do I know any of their names? Like, no, I don't. But you know what I know is that they're Americans.
Because they have cowboy hats.
Yes, and that is the reason I know that is because they all wore cowboy hats, and whenever there was an action sequence, they would do the fucking cowboy thing and hold up their revolvers and like shoot by like moving their hand across the hammer like really fast. It was very cool, very funny. Of course, naturally the Americans are the ones who get cursed, so Imhotep hunts them down specifically, and like the first guy I do feel very bad for because he does get his eyes and tongue taken by the mummy, and like that's an extremely gruesome thing, and then the mummy does come back and finish the job, and like, yeah, RIP. But like, I think they were fine as villains. There's a very funny Mexican standoff style deal where like they both come around a corner, Brendan Fraser's team and the Americans team, and they all sort of like point their guns at each other, and like, they're talking shit back and forth. And then Brendan Fraser's like, you all better get out of here. And one of the Americans is like, well, our Benny says, he's like, last time I counted, there were 14 of me and only 4 of you. And I was like, thank you, Benny. Great. Thank you for your contribution. But yeah, they were fine. They served their purpose as, the red shirts, the cannon fodder. And I liked them.
Yeah, I especially, as you said, like the guy who got his eyes and tongue stolen, because the first night they get like attacked by the Magi when they're at camp. He had started shaving but only got halfway through shaving, so he's talking to Brendan Fraser with shaving cream out of his face. I just thought that was really like a charming little touch for that scene.
Yeah, it's, those are all our characters. I think that the ways in which they're characterized in this film really benefit everyone. And I appreciated, I think their characters, they didn't waste them, right? They had very few characters that, didn't matter at all. They all served a purpose, and I appreciated that.
I do have a question for you before we move on. This movie has a lot of, when you open a book, something screams, a lot of like haunting whispers. When would you have packed up your shit and left?
Oh, the moment that somebody was like, hey, do you want to investigate a place where a person died? Because I am both a white person and not a white person, and the not white person part of me would have been like, no, we don't fuck with that. And so I would have left very early in this expedition.
Yeah. Pre-expedition exit. Mm-hmm. I respect that.
That's not a very interesting answer, but it is the truth. When would you have packed up?
I think it was the moment that Evie opened the Book of Death and there was that little scream. I would have been on a camel and gone. Before she could ever read one word out of that fucking book, I would have been like, nah, book just screamed, bye.
Nah. I don't fuck with talking books. I do think like that they comment on how often like weird shit happens. Like constantly there's just like, they'll say like, this place is cursed by the pharaoh himself or something like that. And like all the fires in the area will blow and like everybody will turn and look at like the fire flickering out and be like, it's weird that happens around here, isn't it?
When she opens the book and it screams, Rick is like, that seems to happen around here a lot. I'm like, yeah, leave.
It's a bad sign, sir.
Books shouldn't scream.
Yeah, I think we take a pretty strong anti-screaming book stance here at Mortified. But what we do not take a strong stance against is having good CGI. In fact, we love bad CGI here at Mortified, and this movie has it in spades.
Oh my God. If there's anything, listen, it's been like a minute. I know you and your wife are watching Doctor Who. It's been like a minute for me, but there is nothing more charming to me than a modern BBC sci-fi fantasy show with a VFX budget of $2 and 22 minutes. And that, for the time, this movie was pretty state of the art, but that's what it feels like now in 2021. Mm-hmm. And I love that very much.
Yeah, I bet because there were a lot of, CGI effects. There's a lot of like, big sand walls with the mummy's face coming out of it and, people getting turned into fucking, weird desiccated jerky men and the scarabs are constantly skittering around. But yeah, like, none of this was like even remotely frightening, just because the CGI was so dated and like normally I really cannot tell when CGI is bad, but like this time you could tell, and like I kind of loved it. It was like this is why we started adding computers to film. This is the reason.
It's really like Well, I still thought the Beatles were icky, but that's because I just personally don't like anything where like things get under the skin like that. That really bothers me.
It was gross.
Icky. That being said, the water looked like flubber, and I thought that was very funny.
There's some ghost water that's like the portal to the spirit realm or whatever, and it constantly looks like purple jello. There's like a purple jello person coming up out of it. Another very good moment was the very last scene where, Evie reads from the Book of Ra, the Book of Life or whatever, and there's a fucking ghost chariot that comes down and captures the immortality of Imhotep, and like there's a full like stretch effect, like basically like an Instagram filter that happens, and you see him him and his spirit get separated, and it's just like a whole second and a half, and I was just like, what are we doing here?
And okay, not to be that guy, but you know what I was distracted by that entire scene? When the chariot came out, I was like, how does the ghost chariot get like a floor plan of like where the most dramatic entrance would be from? You know what I mean? Because they could have popped up from anywhere, but they started at the top of a staircase and made a very beautiful swoop down through Imhotep. I'm like, do they know? Do they get like a 5-second delay, where they're like, all right, fellas, where are we coming in from to make the most impact on our entrance? Because
they get a theater kid style warning where, if somebody touches that book, they get a, like warning that's like, hey, soul capturing in 5, and they go yell back, thank you, 5, and they get their horses ready, and it's great. They just know.
I think that would be my dream job as a ghost. Not that I should dream of labor after I die, but I think that would be fun if I could hook up with some like very theatrical, like functional spirit, and then just help them out with the logistics, where to enter from, when the optimal lighting is, that kind of thing.
You're a producer through and through.
Born to produce TV.
So this movie has some bad stuff. I mentioned up top that, Anuk-Soman is played by a Venezuelan actress. I genuinely do not know if there's a single Egyptian actor. I checked through IMDb. I don't think anybody who is named in this movie is an Egyptian. There's a lot of Moroccans. What's his name? The warden is Iranian. But like, I don't know if there's any Egyptians in this movie, and it's not great.
Well, I just want to know when we decided as a culture that Egyptians were like, what happened? When did we decide that Egyptians were white? In contrast
there's an answer
to reality?
this.
Oh boy,
there's an answer to this, and it's when Alexander the Great invaded Egypt.
Wow, goes that far back, huh?
Yeah, I think that's. Once we get that sort of dynasty, the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt is founded, I think that's when we get that mixing of Greek and Egyptian cultures. And we started seeing a lot more light-skinned Egyptians, which is just a strange cultural phenomenon, but I do believe happened. I'm not sourcing this from anything. I couldn't be 100% wrong, but I believe that is true.
Mm-hmm. So that being said, The Mummy is not the first movie based in Egypt that does this, because you saying that there's probably not a single Egyptian person in this cast did remind me of another famous film from just a year prior.
The Prince of Egypt.
It would be The Prince of Egypt.
Yeah. Yep. We did a whole Bible Boys on that if you want to check out my other podcast. But yeah, that's a bunch of white people too.
Yeah. Just for the sake of our listeners, Aaron, do you remember what famous villain from a movie franchise Ramses shares an actor with?
Oh no, I don't remember who played Ramses. I know like basically every person who was famous in the 90s was in Prince of Egypt. Can you give me a hint?
I can. It is a franchise written by a woman who is constantly the main character on Twitter for not liking trans people.
Oh my god. Who do I know from Harry Potter? Is it Snape? What's his name?
No.
It's not?
It's fucking Voldemort, baby. Ralph Fiennes himself plays Ramses.
Oh my god.
What famous comedy duo currently in a very popular Hulu show with Selena Gomez played Hotep and Hui?
I know this one, and it's Steve Martin and the other guy.
Martin Short.
Martin Short, yes, I knew they shared one name. Thank you.
What famous actor from Star Trek plays SETI?
Leonard Nimoy?
Patrick Stewart.
No! Patrick Stewart, that was the other one, damn it.
And then finally, what woman from Ocean's 8 plays Miriam?
I mean, I don't think it's Rihanna. I want it to be Rihanna really bad, but it's not.
I'll give you a hint. She also starred in a movie called The Blind Side.
Sandra Bullock?
Sandra Bullock, baby.
I know for a fact Michael revealed this to me a year and a half ago, and it still blows my mind that Sandra Bullock was Miriam. Holy shit.
And the other names in here that I have not mentioned are Val Kilmer, Michelle Pfeiffer, and our very favorite sexy dinosaur researcher, Jeff Goldblum.
Oh, fuck yeah. Incredible.
Yeah, so The Mummy is not the first.
Yeah. The
first.
90s were an interesting time for racial casting.
Yeah, woo! Truly. I honestly, when you said in the intro Venezuelan girlfriend, I was like, no. Mm-hmm. But I guess.
Yeah. R.I.P. But despite all of those flaws, I think there are some really, really good moments in this film. I think it's genuinely one of the funnier things we've ever watched on Mortified. Certainly, like, just movies. I think it's very funny. There are just so many little sequences, like, you know, with Benny doing the switching through religions bit, and God, let me find. There's a bit where there's a bunch of, like, you know, little mummies coming up, and Brendan Fraser's fighting with a sword, and at one point, like, he cuts one of their arms off, but then they trap him, and they have one mummy slowly walking over with a big rock to crush him, and he sees the disembodied hand sort of, like, inching its way over because he's dropped his sword. And when it grabs the sword, he grabs the arm, and then he swings it and cuts the legs out from under the mummy. I was like, that's just good. That's really good.
There's also a moment where you brought up the Imhotep's faces in the sand wall as he's trying to stop Brendan and Jonathan, or Rick and Jonathan, on a pedal plane. A pedal power plane busting through to save Evie, and Evie, to prevent this, kisses Imhotep to distract him, and yes, they get through the sand wall. They still crash into a dune.
Yeah, it's really good. There are a lot of really funny moments in this, and I think that really adds to its credit. I think that there is, like, we talked about this in Van Helsing, but, you know, if you don't have a decent amount of jokes, like, your movie is gonna just, you know, trudge along, and this movie is not taking itself seriously at all, and I love that.
Right, and I think comparing it to Van Helsing is a really good point to be making, because this movie, as you said, like, knows exactly what it is, and the tone it sets from the outset is very, like, not so serious and very goofy, and that's why all the jokes land. You know, between, like, the whole Rick wishing for his last wishes to be let go, and all of Jonathan's little, like, one-liners that he gets, like, when he's talking to Evie, and he's just like, she's like, why would you lie to me? I'm your sister. He's like, that just makes you more gullible. Like, it's,
yeah.
You know, it's just like, that's, you can't put that in a serious action movie. You can put it in an action comedy. And I think the problem that Van Helsing has is it just, like, didn't understand its own tone. I wish it had leaned more into, like, action comedy, especially with Faramir there. Who had some really great one-liners. Either leaned into action comedy or just, like, pure gritty action flick, but it didn't know what it wanted to be, which made all of the jokes fall flatter and all of the dramatic moments feel funnier. So hopefully James Wan, if you need some consultants, call us here, mortifiedpod@gmail.com.
Thank you. It's also, as you pointed out, an extremely horny movie, in, like, kind of the best way possible.
Yes. So there's a pretty popular essay that floats around that's called Everyone is Hot and No One is Horny, by an author whose name I already forgot, but
R.S. Benedict.
R.S. Benedict, thank you. And we should say from the outset that R.S. Benedict did become a main character on Twitter for certain reasons earlier this year. So take that recommendation with a grain of salt. But the thought behind it is still worth exploring, which is to say that in modern movies, especially Marvel movies, I notice this a lot in. Everyone is like super beautiful, but nobody flirts. Nobody like there's no like chemistry or like sexual tension that's like fun to explore or fun to watch. And if it is, a lot of it is like not explored by the writers, but definitely explored by the fans. The only movie I can think of that does have that, and I haven't seen it, so take my opinion with a grain of salt, but the only movie I've heard of that does go in that direction is Venom. Especially considering some reviews I read for the sequel that came out this year. But that's the fun thing is like in this movie, Evie and Rick flirt. And I mean, like you said, they strike up conversation with each other, and you don't see that a lot. And she like gets frustrated with him, and he does pick her up and throw her like a rag doll when he's like, I think this revived pharaoh wants you as this human sacrifice, so we're gonna put you in a bedroom, and you're gonna stay there. Yeah, it's just it's delightful. I think we need more of that, honestly, because I'm so tired of watching. Because I feel like right now we get two types of movies, which is like action movies and sad marriage movies. I want my action comedies back where people are flirt and funny.
People are flirt and funny. Yeah, it's it's good. I really I like the fact that everybody is like willing to be like, I wanna hook up with you, and you're pretty hot and I'm pretty hot, and it's mostly the chemistry between Brendan Fraser and gosh, I already forgot the actress, Rachel Weisz, who you probably know her from The Constant Gardener. Yeah, they have a great time. They look like they're having a lot of fun, and it's just so nice when people in movies are having fun. Like
Hugh Jackman.
In Death Note. Yes, like Hugh Jackman, like the one man in Death Note who played
Stanfield.
Lakeith Stanfield, thank you. We just love to see actors having a good time.
Absolutely. Hey, Aaron, I got a question for you again.
Oh, yeah, what's up?
Is this a tabletop?
I think it might be a tabletop. I told you this before, but I because I am so deep in TTRPG Twitter, I kind of have RPG brain, so I'm very much like that Boss Baby tweet where I consume one piece of media and it's just like, this is giving me a lot of tabletop RPG vibes. And I just think like the way this plot is constructed is very similar to like a dungeon, not even a dungeon crawl, but like a Dungeons and Dragons game where the players immediately go off the rails and your DM is just sort of like, well, I'm not really sure what's going to happen, so I'm going to throw in a bunch of random encounters to slow them down, and oh, thank God they're doing some role-playing. Oh, they're doing some great role-playing. Great, awesome. That'll give me more time to add some stuff in. But there's like so many weird like plot, what's the word? Conveniences. Like there's an RAF pilot who they need to get into the third act, who is the guy that they get the plane from. And basically he just shows up for 1 second in Act 2, and they're just like, he talks about how much he wants to die, and also wants to do dangerous shit, and it rules.
Oh my God, yeah, that guy is the best Russian uncle in the fucking world. What? We've asked this question before. What class do we think Brendan Fraser was?
Ooh. Because I know we said rogue already, but I don't think he's a rogue. He's much more in there. I want to say ranger, maybe.
Ooh.
Like, I don't think he doesn't have an animal companion, but he is very much just like getting in there, getting dirty, knowing the terrain, but also, doing some stuff from range, and he's got a good mix of stealth and smash.
Yeah. Honestly, I was almost thinking like monk for a minute, just because he's very like versatile in hand-to-hand combat. But I think he is missing a little bit of a spiritual element, so like ranger's probably it. I would like to pose that Evelyn is a warlock. Interesting.
Who is Evelyn's patron?
Fucking Imhotep. I think that relationship goes completely awry.
That makes sense. Yes, that's very good. Yeah, I love that. I love that she could channel Imhotep's powers in a weird way. I I don't know that any DM could pull this off in a great way, but I do kind of want to see, the warlock whose patron is like super horny for them, and they're like, "You're coming on a bit strong, Chief, but we'll take your magic powers, thank you."
I always wanted to. It's been a while since I've been in a one shot, but I always really wanted to play a patron and warlock who were divorced.
Incredible.
Just have that petty dynamic happening. Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, I think, I don't know if a mummy, I think there could be a version of a mummy campaign that could be not about white people stealing Egyptian artifacts. But I will say that the sequel I would like to see from the Mummy franchise would be the head Magi guy returning to normal life.
Yes, I want to see that dude get an office job. Just like, I see on your resume it says Magi 1993 to 1999. Let's see, you prevented the collapse of the world due to mummification, overdrive, magic powers. Okay, that's interesting. Do you know how to use Excel?
Yeah, it's exactly it. I want to see him try to navigate a gas station. I would watch an hour of that. Just like,
No, I have a camel. It's fine. You don't have camel parking? What is this? Like, it's way more environment. Okay, fine, whatever. Just,
I want to know. I want to see this guy experience corn nuts for the first time. You know what I mean? Like, I want him to be in a gas station looking at the snack aisle going, what the fuck is a corn nut? A corn or a nut? Those are the same. That's what I want. That's the sequel I want. And I think, you know what?
Rolls.
You could do a pretty cool, I don't know, probably lasers and feelings campaign with that setup.
But yeah, I think that there's just a lot of weird contrivances. Like, there's a point where they jump into a manhole that's just in the middle of the street while they're surrounded by enemies. And, like, I've definitely been in a situation where it's like, my idiot players have gotten themselves surrounded by 100 enemies. I have to give them a convenient way out of this. And I just think it's very silly how many weird action tropes go into this.
The fucking dexterity roll you would have to roll as Rick to shoot that mirror at a distance and have it turn the perfect angle to light up the room? Come on.
Yes. Incredible. It's so good. Yeah, I don't know. Do we have a marketing minute for this one? Besides the great sequel you just pitched?
I think the sequel I just pitched would be a good start. We could also have a Mummy sequel where Britain specifically repatriates a bunch of articles or artifacts to its countries of origin, but they could make it the Mummy themed, as like a PR campaign. You can sell it to the public using Brendan Fraser.
Sorry. Okay, I'm not following. How is this going to be VR themed?
No, Britain needs to repatriate a bunch of artifacts,
okay.
Right?
Yes.
And, yes, the countries where the artifacts come from want those back, but, the British people are going to be kind of mad, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of them, that their museums are going to get cleaned out, right? Mm-hmm. So I think if they make, a PSA starring Brendan Fraser, and it's, themed as The Mummy, the 1999 classic film, I think maybe that'll help sell it a little bit,
So instead of the keep calm and carry on, you see Brendan Fraser's face say, keep calm and return all the jewels in the crown to the countries that we stole them from.
Yeah, but he's kind of dashing and a little high in that little getup with a lot of guns in all the holsters.
And his shirt is unbuttoned a little bit.
Just
and
a little bit.
Tussled. Yeah.
Yeah. That's.
It's not the worst idea I've heard to repatriate artifacts. So it's something.
Listen, anything to get Brendan Fraser a paycheck and countries their artifacts back.
Oh god, that made me think of the fucking heist movie that Killmonger from Black Panther and Brendan Fraser from this film could go on to steal artifacts from the British Museum and return them. That would be so good.
Oh my god, Marvel, call us. I would love to get Brendan Fraser a Marvel paycheck.
Oh my god.
I think he's like the only actor in Hollywood who doesn't have one right now.
Who hasn't worked with Marvel at this point, yeah. Oh god, Leyla. When we are not just spouting absolute cinematic gold from our tongues, which are very much within our mouths still, where can people find us on the internet?
You can find me at LEYLSES on Twitter and Tumblr. Might be a little quiet for a little while. Things are happening in the real life, but otherwise, maybe I'll draw someday. Aaron, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at AaronSXL, where I talk about health policy and tabletop RPGs. You can listen to the other podcast I do at The Bible Boys. I think we're talking about the Mel Gibson movie Hamburger Hill tomorrow, which will be interesting. So tune in for that one. You can... our theme song is Obsolete by Keshko from the album Filmmakers Reference Kit Volume 2. You can find more of their music at keshko.bandcamp.com. Leyla, how should we close this one out?
Oh, Aaron, don't make me think of that. Think of my children.
Leyla, you don't have any children.
See you next week.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's fine.
That's the quote.
Fine.
That's the quote.
It's fine.